Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So this video I was excited to make because I wanted to share with you all my trip to Charleston, South Carolina. I wanted to go away and get like a quick reset, and I figured let me go somewhere close, and even if I don't do much, it'll still be like a nice little break. But I'm pleased to say that I'm happy that I went because this was more than expected. It wasn't just like a little break. So let's get started. In many places in the South, there's so much history to talk about, and South Carolina does not disappoint at all when it comes to historic landmarks. So the place that I stayed at was called Middleton Village. This place was like more than a hotel. This is an inn that was located inside what used to be a rice plantation in the past. Now, of course, it's not exciting to think about slavery. It was a horrendous time in our past that comes with a lot of pain. Middleton Village does put effort into honoring slaves by trying to tell their stories as best as they can instead of hiding them and acting like this terrible time did not happen. So while I was walking through like the beautiful scenic land and the gardens, I ran into a plantation church from the past where like the slaves would go and have worship service. And I mean, as soon as you walked in, like you could feel the aura, excuse me. It was indescribable. And can you hear them singing like in the tape that I made? So I tried to like capture that for you guys. And the area was just picturesque. I mean, they had like random sheep in the grass. There was a lot of Spanish moss, ponds, and just something straight out of a movie, just beautiful. And the restaurant that is in the village had this lovely picture. I just wanted to share it with you guys because it's just such a beautiful picture. And I had shrimp and grits from the restaurant, and I did tear them up. The only thing about South Carolina right now is that their restaurants are not at full capacity, so there are so many places I wanted to eat, and I did not get a chance to eat there because I would have had to make reservations weeks in advance. So, but one thing about Middleton Place is that it's like far out. Like it's not considered like in Charleston. It's in like Ashley, West Ashley, but so transportation was a bit difficult to like go places. However, I was blessed to meet a friendly Uber driver named Matt, who was a huge help. He gave me great conversation and wonderful tips of places to go. So shout out to Matt and thank you again. So I had scheduled a horse and carriage tour with this Old South Carriage Company. And on this tour, we traveled through the historic district of Charleston. So there's so much history in these streets. Many of these houses were built before the Civil War, and they tried really hard to keep them preserved. This particular mansion apparently was the inspiration for Scarlett O'Hara's mansion in the movie Gone with the Wind. So if you take a look, too, in some of these houses I'm showing you, like the blue painting on the ceiling of the porch of this house, it probably looks like something that's not that important, right? But wrong. This blue painting is called, the color of this blue is called haint blue. And they're painted that way because the Gullah people of West Africa said that this haint blue, this painting along the house entrance could keep the evil spirits away from the house, thus keeping the house protected. So this house right here, the picture I'm showing you right now, I actually pulled up from a website because I couldn't hurry up and take the picture. I saw it face to face, but the horse on the carriage was going so fast, I couldn't get the picture. So I figured I'd pull it up. But anyway, this was the house of Septima Clark, who lived from 1898 to 1987. Have you heard of her before? Well, maybe I did, but I definitely didn't remember her, and I feel like I didn't hear about her. And so Septima Clark was known as the Queen Mother or the grandmother of the Civil Rights Movement. Like Martin Luther King Jr. Actually referred to her as the mother of the movement. She was known for developing literacy and citizenship workshops. She also pioneered the voting rights movement. Her mission statement was that knowledge could empower marginalized groups in ways that formal legal equality couldn't. So basically, she's pretty much saying what should still be said today: educate and better yourself instead of waiting for big government's help. And so I just simply could not get enough of the history of this area. And so somebody told me about the Aiken Rhett house, and I knew I had to visit this house. This house was built in 1820, and it was sold to William Aiken Sr. in 1827. And so he made his fortunes as one of the leading city merchants. And when he died, he passed it down to his son, William Aiken Jr. And in 1833, William Aiken Jr. and his wife, Harriet Lowndes, made this home their primary residence. William Aiken Jr. was a rice crop owner, politician, and he became the governor of South Carolina. They were wealthy people, and they spared no expense in showing off their riches. So, of course, they were slave owners as well, because that's what was going on at the time. And during the tour, they tell the stories of both of the family that lived there and stories of the slaves. They really try to keep everything preserved, y'all. Like, I mean, you couldn't touch anything in there because, I mean, they had things like the carriages, like the cars that they were driving from back in the day. All that stuff is still in there. You can't touch it, but you could, like, look at it. Like, even the floor, you had to be careful walking because the floors were even some of the original boarding from, you know, back in like the 1800s, 1700s. And the feeling that you get in this house, both in the slave quarters and in the mansion, is almost like a spooky feeling. Like, I don't want to make it sound like, oh, spirits, woo, but I mean, you really can feel like the presence, and I mean like a strong presence. And I was there on the hottest day of the week. So it was really humbling and emotional experience, which leaves you feeling like, wow, like, how did they do it? Like, look at this stove, right? So this stove, they said in the tour, it would take like almost 2 hours to heat up in order to make food. And this was actually the best stove they had at that time. So what would they do if Aiken decided he was hungry like 2 hours before dinner? They couldn't tell him like, hey, the stove won't be ready for 2 hours. You just have to wait. No, they had to, if he was in the mood for shrimp and grits or whatever, they had to go ahead and make it. So they would, it's thought that they basically kept the stove burning daily, all day, in the heat, just in case anybody in the house would get hungry. And that heat already alone from the summer, plus a burning stove all day, that's a lot. That really is a lot. But the meticulousness that these slaves had when they were serving in the mansion is, they actually, I've seen something about this house on YouTube, and they really had it all figured out on how they were going to get everything done. They worked hard, they worked all day, and they slept in the smallest, hottest places. And it just, again, it was just really humbling to look at. And I learned a lot, too. And so afterwards, I had gotten another tour for like another house called the Nathaniel Russell House, which actually was a little bit more glamorous as far as like with colors and all that. So the Nathaniel Russell House was built by Nathaniel Russell, who was an entrepreneur. And so he had like many ships. So he was like importing goods from other countries amongst other endeavors. This house would go on to have different owners. Like, and at one point it was even owned by the Sisters of Charity of Our Lady of Mercy from 1870 to 1905, serving as a school. And so now it's owned again by the descendants of the Russells, and then they use it as a museum. So the thing about history is that the whole house tells a story, you know? The whole story is important, that of the owners and of the slave. South Carolina has made an effort to speak about it all, and I appreciated the tour guides because they kept it real, but not in a pandering manner. I don't need a person to tell me the story of this house, of this whole house, and say, yes, the owners of this house were evil. They should have never existed. Who cares about them? They didn't do much. Because the fact is, that's not true. You know, so I was blessed to go on tours where they said this whole house has a story. And in the past, we didn't like to talk about it too much, but that does not help. We should talk about our history with all the good and the bad, because that's what helps with healing. Our history should not be sugar-coated to just the Moonlight and Magnolia, Scarlett O'Hara Gone with the Wind story, because it's bigger than that, and that would not be the truth. So I really did appreciate the genuine feeling of these tours. And so the look of this house was gorgeous. I mean, it was nice, like the colors of the paint on the walls, like the wallpaper, they were bright and bold. So in order to get to like the actual original colors of this house, they said they had to like chisel like 20 coats of paint to get down to the real colors of the house. And so the people who own this house, they were very rich. So bright colors was able to show how rich they were. Like the brighter, the more wealthier you are. And then this was the master bedroom, and that little bed, it looked small, but that bed was actually massive for that time. And so then after I was done with the tours, I got hungry, and then I went and got some pizza. And so one of my final visits, I was able to enjoy Magnolia Gardens, and it's located like 7 minutes away from Middleton Village. So like I said before, these places used to be plantations. And when we think of plantations, we usually think of like cotton growing in the fields. But in South Carolina, they didn't grow too much cotton, especially in their like marshland area, because cotton doesn't grow well in marshland, but rice does. So this particular plantation was owned by the Draytons, and they still own this land to this day. So the first tour I went on here in the Magnolia Gardens was the Slavery to Freedom tour. And I got to see some of these original cabins that the slaves built. Our tour guide was very educated on the past lives of the slaves, and he has a project that he does where he visits original slave quarters nationwide, and he spends nights in them. He said he spent like 10 nights in one of these homes. And he has a website called the Slave Dwelling Project, if y'all want to check that out. And these homes, they were built by the slaves, and they were considered to be duplexes, or two-family homes, which may not sound bad, but sometimes you would have generations and generations of people in this small area. And, of course, I'm thinking, my first thought is like, how did they even get comfortable during the day just like relaxing with all these people, and there's not enough space? And this is why I'm grateful for where I'm at today, because there was no getting comfortable during the day. You didn't, just like, oh, I'm just going to take a little nap. No, you were outside all day long. Like you just came in to sleep. And so, they were just out on that field. And like even this pond right here, it looks like it's naturally placed, right? But no, this was actually like an old rice field area, and it was dug out by hand by the slaves. I mean, just leaves you so humbled, like it does. So, but Magnolia Gardens really had like beautiful greenery. There's a lot of wildlife. There was like crocodiles and just beautiful Spanish moss on the trees again, bridges, just again another picturesque site, just beautiful area. And so I really did enjoy myself in South Carolina. I'm glad I had that experience. I met some really nice people. I relaxed and I learned so much. I felt refreshed and grateful after I left. Like the history there, it just gave me a feeling like I really need to live my life to my full potential. Like we should live our lives to our full potential. All Americans really should, because we all should. And definitely Black Americans, we should, because Black people at that time, they endured hard times, and they fought for us to be able to do so today, take advantage of resources, educate ourselves, better ourselves. And so, like, there's no reason for me to leave there feeling angry, like, oh, this is horrible that this happened. I mean, we know that it's horrible that it happened, but I didn't want to lose sight of what I was learning, and also just the way they talk about it. It gives it all the respect that it's due, all of it. Like I said, the good and the bad, I mean, it was really all interesting, just looking at like even just the dining room at the Nathaniel Russell House and the china and all that stuff. I mean, that stuff really did look nice. I mean, it did. And so I really had a good time, and I know I'll be back there again at some point. Okay. So I thank you guys for watching. so grateful that I could share this with you. I hope you guys enjoyed. Like I always say, like and subscribe. I appreciate everything. And I'll be talking to you guys soon. All right? Bye.